Well, thanks so much for making the time. Take a few seconds. Excited to share a little bit, an overview of and BIM integration, a few different use cases from across many different industry sectors, well as a case study of a project that LiroHill worked on for New York City Department of Finance to replace the digital tax map for New York City. So I guess we can do maybe intros before we get started, if that works, just to get it over with. So my name is Shiori Sasaki. I'm a consultant and advisor at ESRI. So if you don't know ESRI, we're a GIS software company that also has a consulting business. So I sit in the professional services division, mostly supporting AEC firms like Liro, like AECOM, like HDR. Many of the big ones are big customers, but we also support state and local government, many other industry sectors. My background, I'm an architect originally, and actually a couple old coworkers are here, which is nice, from the firm I used to work at, Nelligan White. And I then moved into the infrastructure world. I worked for the MTA, and then for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, where I accidentally turned into a GIS person somehow, and kind of fell in love with it. And so I've been with ESRI now for about 3 years, mostly focusing on advisory to AEC firms, but also doing some tech consulting around BIM GIS integration. Actually supported a project with Aditi and Cheryle. So with that, I'll unclip myself.
Thank you, Shiori. Hello, everyone. I'm Aditi Patel, Vice President at LiroHill. I am trained as an architect and sort of active in the industry for almost 20 years now. Started as a designer and over time sort of shifted to the dark side and BIM side. Okay. All right, I'm getting yelled at by Andre, just so everybody knows. I lead Liro's virtual design and construction group. We are a multidisciplinary firm. We have design, engineering, and construction management services, and we offer our in-house BIM and VDC technology solutions internally to our teams, as well as we have our own external clients like Department of Finance, MTA, many of the public agencies in the New York City and state area. And I will hand over to Cheryle.
Hi, everyone. Cheryle Cranbourne. I'm on Aditi's team and Deputy Director, Senior Associate. I have a design background, studied interior architecture, but from there went to work for LiroHill in the VDCO department, and really interested in how BIM and other technology tools like laser scanning is being used to help speed up processes and deliver better quality results from design through construction and into operations. I'm particularly interested in that transition between construction and handover and into operations. So this project that we're going to talk to you about today was really exciting and different for me, and I learned a lot, and it was really great to work with the ESRI team and Shiori here. So we're really excited to talk to you all about it.
All right, let me advance the slide. Okay, so just to quickly go through what we're going to talk about again. So just a quick overview of GIS, kind of assuming that not super familiar to most of the audience. Then an overview of the integration, what that means, and then we'll look at a rapid fire series of use cases followed by the case study, the main presentation from Cheryle and Aditi. So let me just make sure that I don't go over my time limit here. All right. So why are we talking about BIM and GIS together? Well, it's because they're actually complementary. And I really liked Angie's analogy or statement that they're kind of the same thing, right? It's all just data, it's spatial data at the end of the day. Where, on the one hand, GIS is about context, it's about the environment, it's about all these factors at a larger scale, right? Whereas BIM is about a built asset. It's providing the information that's needed to design and to construct and hopefully operate a built asset. So bringing these things together opens up a lot of really interesting possibilities across the full asset lifecycle, from planning into design, into construction, and into operations, which is actually also my favorite area of how do you transition information from construction to handover to actually using that data to operate. Okay, so what is GIS? Who here uses GIS? Few people. Okay, cool. All right. Well, so it's an acronym. Stands for Geographic Information System. Sometimes people say science, depends. But it's a framework, right? Like BIM, it's not just software or data. It's a combination of technology, of people, process, and data. And together, all of this makes up GIS. And so when we talk about data, what does that look like, right? So we think about GIS data as layers that we bring together. So that could be terrain, right? That could be infrastructure like roads. It could be parks, right? It could be crime data. It could be census data, right? Population density information, wetlands, flood hazard areas, a project site, or maybe even a project. All of these things have one thing in common, location, right? So that's sort of the ultimate join key, if you will, right? So who uses GIS, right? So GIS is used by, well, this is actually just ESRI figures. So 90% of Fortune 100 companies, all 50 states, 12,000 universities, 30,000 local governments are all users of ArcGIS, and many more organizations use non-ESRI GIS. So what is ArcGIS? ArcGIS, you might have heard of ArcGIS. That is ESRI's product name. So it's actually a mix of over 100 products now, but this is kind of a picture of the core stack. And we like to think of it as a platform. So you have on the left here ArcGIS Pro, which is our desktop software for GIS professionals, sort of the hardcore power user. And then in the middle is our web cloud platform. So that could be like a SaaS ArcGIS Online subscription version, or it could be enterprise, so on-prem or on your infrastructure. So that's our web GIS product. And then on top of that, right, there's many apps, so web apps that you can build on top of your GIS data to create experiences to engage with different types of users. And then even beyond that, there's a whole developer platform, similar to Autodesk. You can extend and build your own applications. And actually, we'll see an example of one later. So one of the really powerful things about GIS is that it can integrate many different types of data, right? So obviously the familiar GIS vector data, points, lines, polygons, but also things like imagery, right? LiDAR, or point clouds, 3D data, right? So GIS is now 3D. Graph data, right? Graph databases, even things like full motion video, other types of unstructured data, big data, right? Real-time feeds coming from IoT sensors, maybe. And then CAD and BIM, right? So CAD and BIM are, I would think, types of information that you all are quite familiar with for doing things like designing a building, right? Figuring out how to build something. By integrating CAD and BIM into GIS, this is one approach to operationalize that data and turn it into something that an asset owner, an asset manager, a maintenance team can actually use to take care of this asset, to operate this asset. So once this CAD and BIM data are loaded into a GIS, it's data. They're records that can be connected, integrated with other business systems that are used to run an organization, run a facility. So super quickly, this is a lot. Sorry for this really busy slide, but I wanted to illustrate that it's not a single product, right? BIM and GIS integration is a capability that exists across this whole platform, across this ecosystem. And there are sort of different lenses or different avenues to accessing that capability depending on what your end use cases, what your end goals are, right? So on the one hand, right, in this left bubble, if from the desktop GIS, pulling in BIM or CAD data to visualize, to query, to do spatial analysis against. Maybe that's a GIS professional, right? On the other hand, maybe a Autodesk user might want to access GIS data, authoritative GIS data from, let's say, AutoCAD or Civil 3D. So being able to pull in web GIS services into a CAD environment, right? So you're not starting with a blank screen. And then moving over into the right-hand bubble, right? What happens when you've brought in your data into a desktop GIS, but what happens when you publish it to the web and create a service out of it, a web service? So now this opens up a lot of possibility. You can share it with people in your organization or with the public potentially. You can start to build applications on top of that data, right? And turn it into something interactive, into something maybe more valuable than it would have been otherwise. And even connecting to other cloud platforms like Autodesk Construction Cloud through an application we have called GeoBIM. So many possibilities opened up once that data is on the web. Okay, so okay, great. I have 10 minutes, 11 minutes. All right, so I'm just going to kind of rapidly fly through some use cases, some examples. So we're looking at just a ArcGIS Online web scene. This is nothing custom. This is all something that could be done out of the box. The caveat here is that it's bring your own data, right? We're not necessarily a data provider. We're a platform for integrating, analyzing, visualizing, managing, presenting data, right? So this is a web scene, a 3D web scene that's combined a reality mesh, right? Photogrammetric mesh. Yes, am I blocking the screen?
Yeah, just
Sorry.
in front of your own team.
All right. Sorry for that. So yeah, photogrammetric mesh, right? Overlaid with just vector GIS data, right? So you see the red, orange buildings. That's just a polygon that's been draped with utilities underground. Right, this is all just being viewed in a browser. So this is something, that you could share a URL to and someone could navigate around this scene. So getting into our use cases. So I've tried to sort of categorize them by where they fit in the life cycle in the bottom there. So this is Dubai municipality built a custom application on top of the ESRI platform, but also connecting in through Autodesk Platform Services to a viewer there of a BIM model. And this is actually the part of their plan check process, or their zoning compliance process, involves a digital BIM submission. So an applicant has to upload a BIM model. It runs through this app, right, that gets checked for compliance against zoning. And if it passes, it is consumed into this web scene that could be used, right, downstream by planners or by other city departments to do, the work they need to do, right? Okay, another example of this kind of planning use case. This is from the Hong Kong Lands Department, or they call themselves Lands D. This is a BIM data repository that they built out. Again, a custom application, right, built on top of the ESRI stack. But the intent here is, I think it's a really large residential development that they needed to plan for and visualize the plan development to different stakeholders, different city agencies, and get buy-in, and make that data actually accessible to these different departments for whatever analysis or work they needed to do. Okay, another kind of planning use case you guys might be actually familiar with, In Situ, might be a customer of In Situ actually, but they are a augmented reality app or platform that allows you to upload a BIM model, right? And then get this AR experience out on site. You can scan a QR code like those people are doing and see the proposed project in real space. So this is this is out of the box for them. It's just a product offering, and it's built again on top of the ESRI platform. This is actually a new example that I saw last week in Oslo. So ESRI internationally has distributors who basically are licensed to sell ESRI tech in their territories. Geodata or Geodata is the Norwegian distributor for ESRI, but they also build their own products and offerings on top of the ESRI platform and using other platforms. So this is not what you're seeing here is not ESRI. This is Unreal Engine via Pixel Stream, but all the underlying data is streamed from an ArcGIS Online or Enterprise environment. So it's WebGIS services that are coming in through this big black box that they built, hosted in AWS, that's running through some automated processes to apply all the textures and everything. And then it's being pushed out into this front end experience that you're seeing here. So these are just examples, not real projects yet. They're still developing this offering, but I thought it was really compelling and thought you might all be interested. Okay, another really interesting and different example, more kind of now moving into design and build. So this is from one of our AEC partners, HDR, who are the program manager for this Ontario rail line in Toronto. So I think it's like 15 or 16 kilometers of new underground infrastructure, right? And I think also 15 brand new stations. So you can imagine just the volume of data that goes into building a project like this, and the number of different consultants and contractors involved, all needing to submit and coordinate their data with one another, and also with the owner, right, with the client. So they built their part this sort of GIS-based digital twin of the project that helped them connect out to the many different sources, areas where other project data were hosted. And yeah, I think one interesting fact is I think there were something like 800 different BIM models that were getting updated almost on a daily cadence, right? If you can think about all the different people involved. And so they developed some automated processes to keep these things in sync. And so this is actually a view of that app GeoBIM that I mentioned, that on the right-hand panel is a window into Autodesk Construction Cloud, into the actual data. On the left is a GIS representation, 3D representation of that model. Okay, this is just we couldn't get the actual client project data, but this is sort of a replica of something that we built for a construction company that wanted to integrate. This isn't exactly BIM, but sort of related. They wanted to integrate construction schedule data, right, from their enterprise system, Oracle P6, EPPM, and link it to features on a map, right? So that they could visualize, well, both at the project level, but also at the portfolio level, what the status was, right? And not look at a really complicated Gantt chart and just quickly see things in a GIS dashboard. And this is the out of the box ArcGIS Online dashboard that someone could put together really, really quickly, without any need to know how to code. Another construction, I would say, construction use case is this example from HNTB. It's a few years old now. They've done some even more advanced things than this, but similarly integrating construction schedule data with 3D features from a BIM model that have been integrated into a GIS web scene, with this time slider that has its cost loaded. So there's a chart of the cumulative cost over the project lifecycle. And this is local. This is MTA's Jamaica Station. Okay, another construction example, PCL construction, and this is also just an out-of-the-box experience builder application they built to manage construction site logistics, right? So again, not exactly BIM necessarily. They're managing their construction operations, bringing in different types of data. So they they fly drones every week, and they publish that imagery. And they can use this as this kind of common interactive platform to plan out construction operations, right? And there's a link between people in the field who might have access to this on their iPhone or iPad, and a project manager maybe back in the office who can kind of see in real time what's going on. How am I doing for time? 1 minute. Okay. All right, so this is another construction example. It's also a few years old, so there's a lot more going on in the AI space, obviously, but that just felt like I needed to show something AI related. So this is a custom tool we built for a energy contractor, big energy contractor that wanted to automate the process of counting installed solar panels. So basically, you're just feeding it an image of this is what a solar panel at this location looks like, count how many there are in this image. And now, because they've integrated their CAD, their design drawing, they understand how many they need to build and compare against how many are there. So this could be part of a pipeline that feeds into a dashboard, basically to automate reporting on progress. Okay, I think I'm probably going to go slightly over, sorry. This is kind of just a proof of concept to show, okay, indoor GIS, right? That's a growing area for large, like campus owners, airports, hospitals, universities, that kinds of thing. So, what you're seeing is an indoors data set displayed in a dashboard. The indoors data has been integrated with data from IBM, their IBM Maximo system showing work orders. And this is an example of just mobile app routing, right? Routing maybe a maintenance worker to the location of the work order, right? And that's all, the source of the indoor map, if you will, is CAD or BIM, right? And I'll wrap up with this impressive example from SFO, San Francisco International Airport, Star Trek. And so this kind of covers all the phases of the asset lifecycle, right? So they use this system to support capital planning, to support design, to support construction coordination, but also operations, things like leasehold management, right, in the airport, super important. And again, it's a combination of all these different types of data. We're just seeing kind of the back end, like what's their data. I don't have access to their front end applications. They have many for different end use cases, but they're all pointing to this data set, right? So they've mapped out airfield assets in 3D. Every time they have a new, the airport's constantly under construction. So every time there's a new project, it gets integrated into this sort of master digital twin. They keep track of their leased spaces here. They even do things like, I think their real-time sensors integrated into this 3D map that's used by the operations team. So really wide range of uses from this single sort of source of data. So now, speaking of projects that sort of span this whole range from planning to operations, I wanted to turn it over to Cheryle and Aditi to share a bit about the journey we all went through for upgrading New York City's tax map. So you probably all used it at some point, but you might not know as much as you'll know after tonight. All right.
Brain and coordination. All right, so that was a really impressive collection of all the examples. I'm a little nervous. I feel like we should have started first because it is really hard to top the presentation Shiori just gave. A little bit of pivot here. What we wanted to focus on was more on the process itself. So what you saw in the examples are the end results of the process that was put in place to integrate the data between BIM and GIS. Our case study is more sort of ongoing. We just finished this project last year, and this is basically the way I see it is the foundation to build more things on top. So it would be an interesting conversation, and we're curious to hear your thoughts afterwards in terms of the process and how to approach a project from a public sector agency where they're trying to reach out to a broad range of audience. So like basically New York City residents. And I will give control to Cheryle. We were thinking it would be a good idea to switch, like go back and forth between our slides. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay, so our client was the Department of Finance, and a big part of what they do is offer up these tax maps. Well, what is a tax map? So we have parcels, which are tracts of recorded land, also known as lots. And a tax map is a map product that shows the status of recorded property transactions, such as apportionment, which is the division of tax lots, and mergers, which is combining them. for a taxable year, which in DOF's case is March. So that's what we're referring to throughout this. Oh my. Okay, 1 second. Sorry. Oh, am I going?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the original tax map was very hand-drawn, I guess, property maps, hand-drawn, and then we evolve into CAD, which is the primary tool for drafting and the maintenance of these maps. This is excellent for producing high-quality maps, vector-based, right? The limitations are that it's difficult to extend beyond the broader information systems. You're really kind of stuck in that view. Enter ESRI, GIS technology in the 90s, 2000s. They really advanced beyond that traditional CAD layers by adding the ability to bring data into the fold. And the impact is rapid enhancement of analysis and visualization capabilities, and really opened up new horizons with this technology. And then in the last few years, we're seeing this integration, a formal partnership between Autodesk and ESRI, Revit and BIM in particular, and of course the cloud. It's bringing us the opportunity to have even more powerful analysis. We saw examples of that in Shiori's presentation. It promotes access and collaboration, being able to work with this data simultaneously, different stakeholders, different parts of the world. And then with the proliferation of BIM, architects and BIM consultants like ourselves, we are able to incorporate into this geographic system 3D spatial databases, enhancing these 3D visualizations. Again, Shiori showed those, and improving the quality and access of information. We're adding this other layer of dimensional data and incorporating it.
Okay, so now that the basic primer about text map and text map system is out of the way, we want to jump a little bit about the project background. Okay, so a little quick overview, who we worked with and what was the context of our project. So we have been a GIS consultant for New York City Department of Finance for a long time, and specifically the project that we built was for property valuation and text mapping unit. We call them TMU, and the scope was essentially modernize their existing text mapping system. And that includes, basically upgrading their entire property information portal. And you might wonder, what is that? In quick, summary, I would say it's your one-stop shop for all the information that you might want to know about as a property owner. So if you own a condominium or a house in New York City area, in Queens, wherever in 5 boroughs, you are more likely to log into this system to see, all information associated with your property, right? So just to give a few examples, the portal gives you the assessed value and, all the exemptions that you may have on your property. It also gives you historical and current records and, ownership information about a property. You can actually review your billing information for accuracy because, at the end of the day, this is the information that Department of Finance uses to do the appraisal and figure out how much tax you will be paying on your property. So it is really important for property owners to be able to log into this, see what information they are being assessed on, if there are any discrepancies, to reach out to Department of Finance for conflict resolution, so on and so forth. And like Cheryle mentioned, there's also a big piece about lot merger. So if you are a real estate owner, you want to use this portal to purchase a lot, divide it up, do some construction, or perhaps purchase multiple lots and merge them together to build a larger complex. So all of this is happening, including paying your own taxes on the property in this portal. And What we notice is, like I said, the original system was built a while ago, actually in 2007, and it's at the end of its life. And what's happening is most of the framework that was used to build the system is antiquated. So we can no longer upgrade it, and we cannot, sort of scale it anymore. What happens is, because it's pretty old and glitchy, the clients end up spending substantial amount of funds in operating and maintaining it. And at the end of the day, it still results in a lot of insufficient workflows. And, overall for them, every, delay, every, inaccuracy is revenue loss. So there was a big component in terms of how can we bring it up to the current status of technology so that we can actually build a better foundation for all the extra work that we want to do in future, right? And that includes, we want to innovate. We want to build a better system that is more aligned with what we saw in Dubai or Hong Kong, But surprisingly, we are in New York City and we do not have a system, citywide system that is as impressive as what we saw for even San Francisco. Yeah. Well, unsurprisingly. and 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 the lead, Carmela Quinto, she's the head of the TMU unit. She was very passionate about using the innovation and technology to sort of build on top of their existing portal to open up data visualization capabilities. That's still me. So just want to give you an example what it looked like before we upgraded, right? And I also want to walk you through a quick process. So this is just one example. There are many different tasks that take place on that portal. But let's say if you are an applicant, you are either a real estate developer or an architect, the traditional process for you to file an application for a condo apportionment is, we all know, most of the industry now uses CAD or BIM, right? If you're not a savvy BIM firm, you're at least using AutoCAD for all your design work. Well, the portal would not accept the CAD drawings. So the process is, you would either print them as a PDF, or you would downright print them as a physical paper, plans. You would upload the PDFs into the system, or you may actually stop by at the Department of Finance office and drop off your package for them to accept it. And that's just the layouts and drawing floor plans we are talking about. There is also additional information that needs to be submitted, along with a lot of legal paperwork and the application forms. But as far as the data is concerned, there's this sizable amount of data that is also getting uploaded, right? So if you are a developer who is building a building with 200 condominiums, you're essentially sitting there entering every single unit number, square footage per unit, the number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, the total layout, whether or not they have any shared, amenities in the building that are being sort of distributed for the taxing purposes. And that can be a very tedious, process. We're not even talking about how many errors we are introducing. On the other hand, somehow magically you finished all of this, you uploaded your package, now it comes on the text mapping unit side. Now the same process unwinds on the department side, right? Somebody will download the package, or they'll receive the hard copy of your drawing layouts along with all other printouts. They'll basically look at the PDF and manually map the boundaries of each condominium unit in the GIS system that they have. And then they will actually use that data to verify what you have submitted in your data sheets. So 200 units, you're mapping, you're drawing them, you're comparing them with the layout, and you're also checking what's being submitted. It takes forever to finish this process. And then you're not even talking about quality assurance at this point, right? So the other thing, we are in Manhattan, we see high rises everywhere. There's several buildings with, multiple condominium units throughout Manhattan, even in Brooklyn and Queens and, all 5 boroughs, let's just say. just to give you context, currently Department of Finance portal has more than 900,000 text lots. And when I say text lot, we're looking at the peripheral boundary, base lot of a property. We're not looking at the individual units. We're just looking at the property line. Out of 900 lots, 280,000 are actually condominium buildings. So condominium lots, and each may have several, anywhere from maybe 1 to hundreds of condominiums. Okay, so the previous system had no capability to visualize your individual condo unit layouts. So imagine you own a condo and you log into your property information portal. You have no way to know whether your assessment is done on the right square footage or not, because you're not able to even visualize the condos, right? You're going by whatever is uploaded in the system, and it takes a lot of time to verify and validate all of that data. So it takes a lot of time. If you have a dispute, it adds more time on both ends. So this was the driving factor for us to come to the table, talk to our clients, understand what they're trying to achieve, understand their vision, and then sort of modernize the system. And Cheryl will go more into, the vision that we discussed.
Thank you. Okay, so obviously we're in need of something a little different, something that includes a third dimension. After all, the world is not flat. So when we started this process, Aditi mentioned Carmela Quintos of DOF. She had this vision. This is an initial kind of mock-up of what we were looking to do, to go from what you see on the left, this very flat tax map that illustrates the lots in the condo lots, into something that shows levels, airspace, subterranean lots, and then of course condo units.
So entire building is represented by that C. That's all tells you it's a condominium building.
So in order to execute this vision, we had to understand a couple of things. We needed to, first of all, figure out who the DOF customer is, how are they currently using BIM, not just for the Department of Finance and those deliverables that they're creating, but what else are they doing with the BIMs that they're creating for Department of Buildings, for example. How are they creating them, what it is that they're doing, and then how can DOF integrate and utilize that product, perhaps augment it in some way to leverage what they need to do on the tax map side. So there are a few techniques for doing this. DOF gave us a list of some willing customers to survey and poll. We sent them a survey. We'll show you the results of those. We asked them things like the familiarity with the RP 602 application, which is what Aditi was just showcasing, and the issues with that. Some of the technical process questions relating to their understanding of specific Revit terms and how they deliver their documents, and when in the process, which design phase are they doing certain things. And then from that, we dove into specific focus groups, asked them even more specific technical pointed questions. And then they also gave us access to some of their models that we could pull apart and really understand how from these models can we develop something that will streamline, and a process that will streamline what they're planning to deliver and into the DOF platform.
So I want to quickly cover the survey findings. So, DOF put us in touch with their customers. We reached out, we sort of worked with them, got on several calls. And then in the end, we summarize all our findings. So what you see here is basically, it was unsurprisingly more than half of the customers were already using BIM. They also were using the models for other agency applications and submissions. So for example, they'll use the same model for Department of Building, paperwork. And more we dove into this, more we sort of meetings and conversations and try to understand their process. This whole idea of creating a solution that helps them deliver multiple packages, for different agencies, right? And all of them basically said, if we provided concise set of instructions, possibly a template that helps them navigate the Department of Finance deliverable requirements, they will actually welcome it, right? There's other things also, like it was kind of funny to find out that there's, we all use BIM, but we are all not using the same, BIM the same way, right? So every firm had a very specific way of building their models. Some firms said, oh, we use rooms, we use areas, and this is how we go about setting up our files. Others said, we do not use areas at all. We use the annotation and text labels to mark up my room and the square footage and whatever. Another example was coordinate systems. So more sophisticated firms actually leverage shared coordinate systems. They have been sort of working with multiple models and then break down all their geometry in different files, bring them all together by shared coordinate system. Some are more advanced, specifically who are diving into like geo-coordinated information. They are actually layering that with this, I want to say state plane information. On the other hand, we also saw the firms who do not understand the concept. They do not use it. They've been producing models for several years, but that's not a feature that they would use. And they didn't see themselves ever putting in the additional effort just to get their models to a point where they are in a good condition to extract the data that we need for Department of Finance needs. So as we started talking to them, we started realizing there are a lot of common things, but there's also a lot of variations. And it was an interesting challenge for us to figure out, how do you design a system that allows you to sort of work with varying degree of literacy and competency when it comes to BIM, technology. What we, through these meetings and conversations, we figured out that the RP 602 process has a lot of paperwork. You have lawyers, you have application forms, you have to produce like Department of Building appraisal documents. But there are three main things that are really important for the validation process. And they also happen to be the three deliverables that can really benefit from, leveraging BIM and maybe even a template. So one of them is the worksheet. And I went over this briefly. It is basically a data sheet outlining every single condominium that you are applying, under this application process. There is information like unit number and square footage and so on and so forth. There's quite a bit of information that needs to be filled out. The other thing is every application requires drawing plans, and they're not just any drawing plans. You have to include certain information that the Department of Finance is looking for, and there is a format around it. And then the third one is the lot boundaries that you would use to trace this information. The TMU would use this information to trace into the GIS system. Lot boundaries are also the boundaries that establish the square footage of your units. And I mean, everyone is BIM user here, or most of you guys are, and you can see all of these deliverables are quite easily achievable if you're using BIM. So that was our sort of focus, that can we at least extract certain deliverables that help, applicants These three are also the most time-consuming deliverables. So that set the premise for the work that we did in terms of finishing the focus group and then developing a framework that allows the deliverables.
Okay. So with the solution, we had a few goals in mind. One is it had to be simple and it had to be conducive to a broad range of applicants, a broad range of architects, broad range of skills, and also at any phase in the design process. If they receive the template at the beginning, when they're starting the project, that's fine. If when they're doing the DOF application, it's towards the end of the design phase, they can also use this product. We wanted to encourage applicants to upload their BIM files because they're creating them anyway. DOF wants that data. How do we get them to give that in a way that they're happy with? And then also, how do we integrate the most important parts of that data into this GIS platform? And we knew as we were going along this process that this solution would ultimately reduce errors, enable efficiencies, and create consistent drawing documentations for the TMU to review. And this is what that looked like. You saw that slide previously that Aditi had up. This is that corresponding slide. By the way, who here has done an RP 602C application? Anybody? Okay, well, so these are aspects of the template that we put together. We knew that our designers, our architects, they use areas and they would be happy with a template. So we leveraged an area category with parameters attributed to it that you could copy and paste into your project. Drawings template here that has a layout with the information that DOF is expecting to see that is required as part of the drawing deliverable, and then standards as well as far as how to draw the geometry so that it handshakes well in the system and it will produce accurate information. And here's a video. We created videos with instructions for architects and developers to use so that it would make sense on how to leverage the tools that are available on the DOF website. So you see on the left the template, and then on the right the project file. We're copying over that geometry. The parameters come with it, and then the schedules as well. Drawing templates. So there are videos that are there that we also created as part of this process. And again, we tried to make this pretty clear and simple. And we got feedback as well from architects, throughout this process to see, is this helpful? What do you think? And really trying to make it like iterative and usable.
So in the end, this is a oversimplified diagram showing the entire process. The first box is the activities in general taking place on the applicant side. So basically, you would go to DOF's website, download our template, and then you would sort of use the components of those templates into your file. A very interesting, information here. We went back and forth in trying to figure out whether we want to create a template that can be copied into your file or whether we want people to bring their data into our template. And bunch of testing kind of uncovered that Revit is not really good at copying over all the data from one file into other. So we started sort of looking into, let's flip the workflow. Let's make it simple so people can copy paste the components in their file without adding extra work to them. They can just use our framework to start extracting the data that they need. And then, so the workflow would be, you do that, you get the file, you generate the deliverables from your file that you can continue building as you finish your CD 50%, CD 75%. We didn't want people to make copies of their file and then have to worry about maintaining different versions for different application processes. Once that's done, the package is uploaded into the portal, and now somebody from text mapping unit will receive the alert that now they have a new deliverable. They will basically pull that data out of the server onto their system. They can quickly visually check that most of the information checks out. And if everything is kind of kosher, they can leverage GIS automation workflows to start extracting information readily from the BIM process. And because all of this data is coming from model, it reduces quite a bit of the validation time that they would normally put into just like checking a PDF and then checking the Excel sheets and then doing all the data entry. So this process eliminated a lot of the rework. And then if the final QA check is passed, then this information will be published into the property information portal for the users to take a look at, right? So just a quick, overview. The workflow we design allows you to strip out all the walls, all the windows, doors, everything. All we care about from DOF's perspective is the boundary of your unit. And we started looking into areas because that naturally, gives you the square footage that you need. And during this testing, we realized, out of all the categories that ArcGIS can process, areas is the only one that it doesn't. So that's where we reached out to Shiori and we started talking to their support team, and we had to start like looking into what can we do, because a lot of the decisions we are making are requiring that this functionality is it's available to the applicants and to the TMU. And Esri team put together a lot of smart people on their end, sort of worked on a patch. And within, I want to say less than 2 weeks, you guys rolled out a patch that started accepting all the area as a category. And that drastically sort of reduced the effort in terms of like, what else do we need to try? How do we take the room spaces and combine? All of those questions then went away. The other thing we noticed is that ArcGIS is really good at reading information from Revit. So like your datum, your levels, your elevation heights, all of that can be configured and brought in, with high accuracy. You can also define the scale and units for your imports. And then, obviously the attributes and data, that is what the DOF is interested in. We were able to sort of create a very simple utility to bring all of this information along with the shape files and geometry. And the goal was to eliminate all the custom automation workflows so that the software and the platform itself does all the heavy lifting. And we were able to successfully achieve that just working with GIS team. The other things outside of just the technical issues, that we considered during the development of this workflow were, the GIS and BIM system architecture was one thing. The other thing was Revit upload size. All the samples that we received, we noticed architects really like to detail their models. So you would get like moldings and light fixtures and, like a very nice, beautiful, highly detailed families and components. They are amazing, but they're also making your files like really heavy. And there were certain limitations in terms of online upload capabilities of the portal. So we had to sort of work with the vendor, figure out what is a reasonable file size that we can accept. And, I want to say it's around 250 megs at this point, which is, I think, more than enough for the information that we are looking for. The other considerations were like, it's all going in cloud. Well, what does the cost of cloud storage look like? If everybody in New York City starts uploading their models, like, do we have to worry about storage capacity? So there were, detailed conversations with Microsoft Azure team and figure out what is the best way to store and sort of like replicate the data so we have all the records, but it's not costing us a fortune in terms of hosting. Obviously Revit versions, because Revit is not backwards compatible, we have to sort of start thinking about how do we keep up and maintain this every year. We have to roll out a new version. And biggest challenge was to figure out where do we keep the instructions and template. Because if you, well, I mean, none of you have actually used the RP 602 process, but if you log into that portal, you realize there is no extra space to have. It's a pure application portal. That's all it is. There's a bunch of fields that you fill out and you attach your documents. It does not have a space to add like informational or educational content. So we just sort of like work with government marketing teams to figure out, well, what is the alternate location on their website to store the videos, store the instructions. That's all just on the applicant side. Once you look at the TMU, which is the Department of Finance side, the challenges are like I mentioned, coordinate systems. Not every model that you receive is organized right. So what happens if your model ends up on, I don't know, somewhere on Atlantic Ocean, or, it happens more than enough times. Do we reject the application and add more frustration because now they have to go in and fix the entire coordinate system for this one file upload? Most likely they're not going to do it. They'll probably say, it's okay, I'll just print my PDF and attach it. So we wanted to encourage the users. We wanted to make the process so simple that they are more inclined to just, work with us. So we had to figure out the entire alternate approach in the event we don't have a coordinate system. Like now, I think we want to say we can type in the address and it'll actually drop the geometry in the correct location. And all the TMU staff has to do is just orient and align it to the boundary lines. But it would do 90% of the work. Just the system will take care of that. The other thing was, how do we verify the files we are getting are high quality and it's not just a random, garbage file upload? So there's a lot of quick backend checks and automated utilities that were put in place to vet that, the data meets the standards that are put in place. But all in all, this is what the final result looks like. The portal went live, I want to say sometimes towards the end of last year. And what you're seeing is once you log in as the property owner, this is what you see. You are able to either put the address or type in your borough block and lot number, and it'll take you to the exact address. By the way, you can tell this is our favorite lot because we use that for the whole presentation. And then you can actually, pull up the entire model and click on the down arrow to navigate it to the precise condominium unit number. Once you select that, it populates all the proprietary information about the building, the square footage, the tax assessment, if there is a lien on it, like all kind of personal information for the property owner. It's all available in this portal now. And I wanted to add this one last slide in terms of what did we really learn from this exercise. So our takeaway was most of the community is already using BIM. The vendors, both Autodesk and GIS, now has achieved the capabilities to successfully transfer data back and forth. Can we actually aspire to create a citywide digital twin? And what do we need to put in place to achieve that? So the first thing is we need common standards. We need to have a framework that can be used to build on top. And that is where we are going with this whole thing. And if you look at the opportunities, once you have a citywide framework, it doesn't have to be too complex. It just has to be a basic framework that everyone can follow without having to put in a lot of extra time, right? Once you put it in place, the use cases are endless. You already saw different examples. I mean, you can use this basic map of all the buildings for, informatics, whether it's for ecological footprint, whether it's to figure out emergency evacuation routing, or for Department of Finance, you can also use it for like view shed analysis, or to assess your air rights for a particular property. So there are possibilities, once you have a basic foundation in place. And I'll hand it back to Shiori.
Thank you. Yeah, really great presentation overview of that project. Thank you for that. I have some questions, but I guess I'll ask you after. But just as kind of a call to action, I guess, to the group here and to architects in general, you know, why start here, right? In the blank screen of AutoCAD, or maybe it's Rhino, or maybe it's Revit, right? We saw all these really incredible examples. We saw the sophisticated, complex DOF tax map project, right? You don't have to get into that level to start taking advantage of GIS in your workflows, right? It's easier than ever to use GIS data now, right? There's SaaS platforms like ArcGIS Online. There are others that make it really easy to consume, right, authoritative data sets, to analyze them yourself, just kind of self-service, and potentially even bring them into a design environment through an integration with CAD or BIM. So this is just ArcGIS Online, a map looking at some layers in the Living Atlas, which is a curated catalog of GIS content, authoritative GIS content. You can scan that QR code and see what's available if you want. And then we put together this questionnaire, actually. You can tell we like survey. Yeah. So building on some of the questions Aditi and Cheryle came up with for the project, this is kind of extending on that theme of trying to understand how are people thinking about BIM and GIS integration? What would you do with it? So we'd just be really curious to understand what this group thinks, and feel free to share it too with your friends. We'll maybe somehow share the results at some point if you're interested. And there's also, we have a bunch of links to resources, case studies, tutorials, things like that. So if you fill out this survey and you leave your contact information, that's the reward. So there's that. And yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know if you want to say something about.
We just acknowledge. We wanted to. This really doesn't look good, right? We wanted to acknowledge support of Carmela, Howard. They're both our clients from Department of Finance, and also Rich Anito. He's our GIS practice leader. We focused our presentation mainly on BIM context, but there was also additional things taking place in the background for overall GIS infrastructure setup. And really, I mean, thank you for giving this opportunity to present our work today. And I hope, it sparks a lot of ideas in terms of what else we can do with, now the combined forces of the two platforms, and what else, in terms of data visualization that we would like to consider putting together. Thank you.
This platform.
Yes. Yeah. It's a handful of buildings. We're asking people to upload more and more. We just went live recently, but there has been more uploads of data. Yeah. We can include a link to the portal, and we send it.
Yeah, if you fill out the survey, we'll include a link to the publicly accessible New York City Department of Finance tax map. You can also you can Google, I think, NYC DOF property information portal, and browse it yourself. But we don't need your yeah. I wanted to make a very quick plug for a couple upcoming GIS related networking events. I'm standing in front of the screen again, sorry. So there's 2 QR codes there. This one is in 2 weeks on the left, the ESRI Young Professionals Network, New York City chapter spring meetup. So everyone's welcome. There's no age limit or anything. That's going to be downtown. And then there's a Mappy Hour in a couple more weeks in Brooklyn. So yeah, you're all welcome. GIS people are friendly. And there's no restrictions. Yeah, exactly. You're all welcome. Yeah.
Oh, the validation. So historically, the discrepancies have been around square footage. Okay, yes. So if I understand this right, your question is about accuracy of the data and how is it validated? Yeah, okay. So historically, the issue has been, you are sort of drawing the boundaries in BIM or CAD and then exporting that data and then doing the data entry in the application. And just because it's a lot of repeat process, manual workflow, people end up making mistakes. On the client side, now they're receiving a PDF and they're receiving an Excel CSV file. So they have to trace over the boundaries, make sure the scale is right, and because the information is used for tax assessment purposes, it has to be within certain level of accuracy, right? I think from conversations with DAP, we were told it has to be within the rounding square foot. So that's how accurate they want it to be. So what would happen is, it would result in a rejection and additional information request. And it's just like back and forth in terms of just getting to a number that is acceptable on, DOF's end, right? That was actually the driving factor for us to say, why are we not using BIM? BIM does all of this, like Revit spits out areas from your closed boundaries. Why are we not leveraging the benefit that it already gives us off the shelf than trying to go through all this like data entry process? So the model template that we designed, it basically has a specific name parameters in place. It has the area calculation guidelines in it. So as long as you follow them, and it's a closed boundary, it will put out the square footage, right? And we also have set up the tolerances and whatnot. So it would be within certain like tolerance. As long as it meets the tolerance, the DOF will accept that deliverable. And on the QA/QC side, what happens is somebody on the DOF and will open the file and they'll look at the layouts. And as long as the area lines, which are of specific color, matches up with the rules, they know they can trust the square footage because it's being generated by the software. So that's how we eliminated a lot of back and forth. Yes. Because, otherwise you're just looking at like data entry and then rejections and communication back and forth. And we're not talking about like quick, fix, right? This process drags out over days, possibly weeks. Because you reject an application, then the applicant has to go back, do the whatever they need to do. I'm sorry? The portal is live. So, in terms of the validation process, it depends on the project. So if you have only handful of condominium, it's faster. If you have a major, development, you still have to go through several floors and every unit. But I can guarantee you it's still faster than the traditional workflow. Yeah. Yeah, because it's done by Revit.
But then
Yes.
there's manual validation.
Validation takes time, but it's still faster than, going through the traditional workflow. Yeah.
it was at the Dubai example. Yeah. So the question, your question is about the compliance tracking. Are you talking about the Dubai municipality example? Okay. Compliant? Did you say compliance? So I think compliance I mentioned in the context of let me try to go back. Yeah, the Dubai example, which was a custom application that um, ESRI didn't develop, although it's built on top of ESRI technology. So a technology consultant built this application for Dubai municipality according to their business requirements around accuracy of compliance against their zoning or code, right? So I personally can't speak to the accuracy piece for this, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah. This is actually from 5 years ago, so it might have evolved since then. But yeah, I know there's some AI compliance solutions out there now too, so they might be looking at it. Yep.
So, okay, so that was okay. So, yeah. So the question is what happens to the Revit file, because there might be certain companies, firms, architects who are very hesitant to put their data on cloud for a Department of Finance application. Yes, that question came up. Yes. Yeah, no, I work with some of those clients. I know exactly what you're talking about. No, so first of all, the solution that we are building is not a mandatory it's not a requirement, right? The traditional process of uploading your floor plans as a PDF is still open, like that is available, and I don't think it'll go away. This is for the customers who are more tech savvy. They are comfortable around sharing their building information to a Department of Finance unit. They can take advantage of this capability. The other thing is, I mean, just trying to flip the argument. I understand you're not comfortable around it, but you do need to submit it to get your tax appraisal, right? So sure, but you're still giving your layouts and PDF floor plan. So it's not a 3D model, but you do share all the layout information and exact program of your building with the clients. Yes. Just the areas. Yeah. Delete everything. Yeah. Yeah. Because we don't want the big files. Yeah. So, I mean, the template that we give you, that would allow you to practically delete all the geometry except for the areas. And as long as you submit the areas with the embedded metadata, it would still allow us to extract the necessary information on our end. So that's another approach. Yeah.
You happy with that? What do you think? Okay. Areas are fine. Okay.
Yeah, we did a lot of testing. No, we did a lot of testing where we would just like isolate everything and delete it and see if the data still comes through, and it does. So yeah, as long as you give me that, we're happy. Yeah. No, that lives on the portal. Yeah. They're also sensitive about their data. You had a question?
simple.
So okay, so the question is, how are we intending to collect all of this data? And at some point in future, would it be a requirement to submit a lightweight model, right? Yeah, no, because it's a government agency, they have to provide multiple options to the users. Think about like elderly people who may not have BIM literacy or not have the access to the tools. So yes, they encourage use of technology, and they would be like gladly accepting the deliverables in BIM, but you can still print your drawings and submit it as a hard copy, and they'll have to accept it. I think what they're trying to do is build a framework so that as over time they can sort of like create a digital twin of all their properties, and use that for the property owners to have better understanding of their properties and tax assessment process. So digital twin is basically digital representation of the physical world, right? So like they're trying to replicate and create a virtual environment which represents the New York City buildings and the properties that the owners own within the New York City area. Yeah.
And
Okay, so the question here is, right now the solution focuses on Revit, but what happens if the smaller firms are using non-Revit BIM applications such as ArchiCAD, like if the Department of Finance can accept those deliverables? The answer right now is no. The entire process is sort of designed around Revit deliverables. And we did talk to several firms, and there wasn't a single one that we came across who was using anything but Revit. Yeah. So I'm sure there are firms who use other tools. Maybe they just weren't part of the focus group. Because I mean, we only took a subset of the architecture community in the New York City area. So it would be preposterous to just assume everybody's using Revit. But I with a high level of confidence, I can say most of the users are in Revit world.
with any type of into the A, could that be a different sort rather than Revit original?
So the question is, with ACC being able to consume several different file formats, could it be used as an alternate source to accept the deliverables? We did consider ACC. We did actually think that because ACC and ESRI has this connector now in place, it can automatically accept the deliverables. However, we decided to go against it because one, not everybody, especially the smaller firms, use ACC. And then the second reason was we really didn't want high detailed, large file sizes. We wanted, like Cheryl said, we actually encourage people to just delete everything and give us the areas. Yeah. 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 Okay, so the question here is, what is the advantage for elderly people, anyone who is not technologically savvy, to to access the portal and its 3D capabilities. It is optional. You don't have to navigate in 3D environment. You cannot click on the 3D visualization option and still access all of your information just through the regular user interface in the portal. So,
I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, because like I go onto this website all the time. Like, every day.
Oh, really?
right.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to figure out, like, as an end user,
Mhm.
how am I benefiting extra bells and whistles?
What do you have to lose if you have extra bells and whistles? Let me ask that. Don't click on it if you don't like it.
Oh, no, I'm not, I'm just curious from like, the finance, like they're like, what their vision is. Like, what's
So,
their vision?
I think
I'm not being critical.
no, I know, I understand. I have a no. What I was trying to say is, so the vision is not driven by um, just what the consumers get. I think there is also personal, ambition, right? Like we are one of the biggest cities in the world, and there are, believe it or not, there are government officials who really want to push the boundary, who want to modernize the system. They want to take the infrastructure to the next level. And this particular person happens to be one of those people who really see the value in elevating the final sort of end product.
Once you have that geometry in place, what are the next steps? You could look at the orientation, where is it in relation to the sun setting and the sun rising? You look at the view shed analysis and where the buildings are around it in the context, so that their potential down the road. And then also in terms of 3D, you have air rights, development rights. So being able to visualize potentially the development rights above your building as well as subterranean rights, like none of that is being captured right now. And being able to have a framework to collect that data means that you can then collect it and utilize it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, there's another question. Over
I know he's been raising his hand for a long time.
Okay. Looking at that map there, that's block 427. One is lot 2.
Mhm.
How much of, and what we see in blue is something that has been populated with information.
Yeah.
In terms of the other one, is it that over the course of 2 years, or every 5 years, that a building has to fill out that RP 61212, whatever.
Yeah,
number,
yeah.
and that you generate information? Like, is the end goal that every block and lot will have information, and over the course of that time, is it only because the building is active and it's a new building, or it's doing renovation, that you populate information, or are you getting it off of like a yearly or 5 years, where building has to resubmit information to generate your database?
Yeah, I think answer is all of the above. So typically, let's say if you are buying an existing lot and building a new building and you're using BIM, there's a high probability that you would like to take advantage of the streamline process. So you would upload the information over time. Usually that happens when either you merge the lot, divide the lot, or the building changes the ownership from one owner to the other, and then there's additional work happening, right? So that's when you go in front of the Department of Finance to get the assessment done of your unit. I don't think year to year somebody would actually invest in a 3D model and upload it, because they already are in that system, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is Department of Finance is actually looking into digitizing the existing applications, right? So like the lots like that, you may, as a property owner, you may not want to submit it, but they can, because they have access to the record, they can create a extremely simplified massing model that does not give away any, like private, information about your building, where the entries are, where the exits are, but they can over time create an entire 3D portfolio by filling the gaps in 3D deliverables. Yeah,
Simple
right.
drawing.
Just create a mass. Exactly.
That precision is expected over the full 20 years, whatever.
Yes. Yeah. So it's going to be a long-term process.
50-year-old building. With that information, do you get any information on that building? Or do you have to wait till there's activity in that building?
I think whether or not building is active, most likely you are paying taxes annually on it. So you won't as a building owner, you may not upload the model, but they may decide to just digitize the property based on the existing information, right? So they'll create a simpler volumetric model that just shows a color coded mass, and when you click on it, it gives you the address of the building and square footage of the building, which is a public information.
Just metadata, no geometry.
No geometry, no program specific information, nothing that is confidential that the property owner will not want to disclose. But they can. I mean, imagine it would look very much like what you see in Google Earth right now without the geometry draped with the image, right? It's just a massing model. Yeah.
Seems like
Hmm?
it's a lot of work in the future, and that it's gathering information over time.
Yeah, they do.
Right, but there's also garbage in and garbage out. And I'm sure
Yeah,
that
there is.
what